Hello, welcome to the next video in the series on parts of speech. In this video, we will look at verbs. What are verbs? In syntax, that is in grammar, a verb is a part of speech which conveys either action or a state of being. So words that convey action, for example, bring, read, walk, run, learn, etc. These words convey action and they are examples of verbs. But not all verbs convey action. Some of them convey a state of being, like to exist, stand, etc. So these are also examples of verbs. Sentences in English usually have a main verb which is stated in a tense. So one can say that the most basic element in a sentence is a verb. You can have a sentence which is only a verb. If it is an imperative sentence like come or go or something like that. They are also full sentences which can stand independently, but the only element is a verb. So a main verb is the most important part of a sentence. All sentences should have a verb, and these verbs are usually stated in a tense. Like tense shows the whether something is happening in the past, present, future, etc. Now verbs can be divided first of all into lexical verbs and auxiliary verbs. Let's see what these are. Lexical verbs are also called main verbs. They have a clearly defined lexical meaning. We already mentioned while discussing word class that lexical meaning means that you can look them up in a dictionary. So lexical verbs, if you look it up in a dictionary, you will see the meaning of those words. They will have a clearly defined meaning. And these verbs can stand independently. They are an open class, which means that more and more lexical verbs can be added to that particular language, whether it is English or any other language. They are an open class. They are always expanding. And lexical verbs themselves can be divided into two types. We said that lexical verbs take tense. They show tense, and so based on their tense formation, you can divide lexical verbs into two: regular verbs and irregular verbs. Regular verbs are verbs which form their past tense with ed. Most words like play, played, we know that most of the verbs in the English language form past tense by adding ed to them, and they are called regular verbs. But however, there are a large number of words in the English language which do not form the past tense by adding ed but have other forms. They may have different forms. These are called irregular verbs. For example, the past tense form of the verb write is wrote, and the past participle form is written. If you contrast this with a word like play, the past tense form and the past participle form are both ed, played. So in write, instead of saying writed, we say wrote. There is a change in the very form of the word rather than adding an inflection ed. Such words, such verbs which form their past tense form not by adding ed but by some other means are called irregular verbs. So regular and irregular verbs come under lexical verbs, and lexical verbs are also called the main verbs. Then there is one more category called auxiliary verbs. Auxiliary verbs are also called helping verbs. They are a closed class. There are only a few of them. Unlike the lexical verbs, which are an open class, they are ever expanding, you can keep adding to them. Auxiliary verbs are a closed class. They are a small set of verbs. And they cannot stand by themselves. They have to be used along with the main verb. And these are used to show the verb's tense or to form a question or a negation. Auxiliary verbs can also be divided into three categories: primary auxiliaries, which are the verbs do, have, and be. The interesting thing about these verbs do, have and be are that they can function both as auxiliary verbs and as lexical verbs. So if I say something like I had breakfast, here have is used as a lexical verb. But if you uh, ask a question like, have you seen that boy? Have you seen that boy? There, have is an auxiliary verb and it is used along with the main verb, which is see. To have seen, have plus see. So, see is the main verb in that sentence, and have is used as an auxiliary verb. It shows the tense and person. You, have you seen? If the question is, has she seen? Then it will be has rather than have. So there the person has changed, and if you want to say had you seen, then it would show a different tense. It would show the past tense rather than the present tense. So those kind of changes can be seen in auxiliary verbs. And when you say, have you seen that boy, you are asking a question. So auxiliary verbs can be used to show the tense form of the verb and also to form a question or a negation. Have you seen that boy? I have not seen that boy. In both the question and the negation, the negative sentence which answers that question, the main verb is see, but have is used as an auxiliary verb or a helping verb. So do, have and be are primary auxiliaries. They can be used as both auxiliary verbs and lexical verbs. The second category of auxiliary verbs is called modal auxiliaries. Modal auxiliaries, they show mood. So it is not modal, it is modal. It shows mood or mode. And these are can, could, shall, should, may, might, will, would, must, and ought to. These words, modal auxiliaries, express ability, possibility, permission, or obligation. Ability, can I do it? I can do it. Possibility, this might happen, this may happen. Permission, asking permission, can I do this? Could I do this? And giving permission, yes, you may, yes, you shall. All those things. And obligation, is it necessary to do this? You must do it, you ought to do it, like that. So these are examples of modal auxiliaries. And then there are also semi-modals or modal phrases. Words like dare and need are called semi-modals because they have certain features of modals but some other features of main verbs. For example, if you want to form the negative, if you want to write a negative assertion using verbs dare or need, or if you want to have a frame a question with dare or need, you can include a helping verb, an auxiliary verb before them, like do you dare to do this? Do you need to do this? I don't dare to do this. I don't need to do this. So this is something that usually you do with main verbs, because you don't normally put two auxiliary verbs together. You don't say I can shall or I can should, I can might. No, you don't do that. So in that way they are different from modals, but they also are very similar to modals. So dare and need are examples of semi-modals, and then there are also things that we call modal phrases, where you have words like ought to, used to, have to, etc., which also perform the same function as modals, but they are phrases rather than individual words. Next, we move on to certain other features of verbs which are tense and agreement. So we already mentioned that verbs have tense, they show tense, and this is shown through inflections. Not just tense but also subject verb agreement is shown through inflections. And verbs are inflected That means modified in form when conjugated. For example, verbs take s, ed or ing at the end of the verbs in some forms depending on the tense and the subject-verb agreement. In English, a verb may agree with the person and number of its subject. For example, if the subject is in third person singular and the verb is in the simple present, then that verb will take s at the end. He plays, she plays, it seems, etc. If the subject is first person or second person, whether it is singular or plural, and the verb is in simple present, then it will have a different inflection. I play, you play, there is no S that is added to it. And if it is simple past rather than simple present, then it will be he played, she played, it seemed, etc. So these kind of inflections which you are already familiar with, you can see them in verbs, at the end of verbs, to modify the form of the verb in order to reflect the tense and the subject verb agreement. Now we will look at some more categorizations of verbs. Based on whether or not the verb has an object, verbs can be classified into transitive and intransitive verbs. Intransitive verbs are verbs which don't have an object. They only have a subject, they have no object. For example, he runs, it falls. And we know that how do we understand whether a verb has an object or not? If you ask the question what of that verb and there is an answer to that, an answer which can be in the form of a noun or a pronoun, then that answer is the object. And if the verb has an object, then it is a transitive verb. If it doesn't have an object, it is an intransitive verb. So examples for intransitive verbs are he runs. You don't ask what he runs. What does he run? He runs. That's all. It falls. So these verbs have only subject and no object. Transitive verbs, on the other hand, have both a subject and a direct object. For example, she speaks English. What does she speak? She speaks English. We visit him. Whom do you visit? We visit him. So like that, speaks and visit in these sentences are examples of transitive verbs. They have both a subject and a direct object. Now, there is another subcategory of transitive verbs, verbs which have both a direct object and an indirect object, which are called ditransitive verbs. Di meaning two. Examples of these: her mother gave Rani a hug, or her mother gave a hug to Rani. So in the sentence, her mother gave a hug to Rani. What did her mother give? A hug. So a hug is the direct object. And to whom did the mother give a hug? To Rani. So Rani is the indirect object. In the first sentence, it is just slightly inverted, but it means exactly the same thing. Her mother gave Rani a hug. What did the mother give? A hug. Direct object. And to whom did the mother give a hug? To Rani. So Rani is the indirect object. So these are examples. Give is a very particular example of a verb which has both the direct object and an indirect object, and such verbs are called ditransitive verbs. Another categorization of verbs is into finite and non-finite verbs. A finite verb is a form of a verb that has a subject and which exhibits tense and number in an independent clause or sentence. Finite verbs are distinguished from non-finite verbs which do not show a distinction in tense and number and cannot stand alone as the main verb in an independent clause. In English, the non-finite verb forms are infinitives, gerunds, and participles. So, finite verb has a subject and it shows tense and number. That is the most important difference or characteristic feature of a finite verb, whereas non-finite verbs cannot show tense and they do not show any distinction in number either. Because of that, they cannot stand alone as the main verb. So, and the examples are infinitives, gerunds, and participles. We will talk about gerunds and infinitives in a moment, but let us look at some examples of the same verb being used in different ways. First example, they watched the match. They watched the match. In this sentence, watched is a finite verb. It has a subject, they, and it exhibits tense. Watched, ed, is added to it. They watched the match. In the second sentence, they are watching the match. Here, are is a finite verb and watching is a non-finite verb. So watching does not exhibit tense. It is a participle. It is the present participle, present continuous form of the verb watch. So here it functions as a participle and not as a finite verb. So the same verb watch is used in two different ways. When you say they watched the match, watched is a finite verb. It shows tense. But when you say they are watching the match, tense is shown by the helping verb are. And are is a finite verb here, whereas watching does not change according to tense. Now you will see this if you change the subject of that sentence. Instead of saying they are watching the match, if you say she is watching the match, which is the verb that changes according to the subject, according to the person. Watching doesn't change, but the verb be changes. Instead of saying are watching, you have to say she is watching. So that shows that they are watching, she is watching. So according to person, we can change. And also suppose you make it into the past tense. They were watching the match. He was watching the match. Again, watching doesn't change. It is the verb be that changes from are to is to were to was, depending on the changes in the subject. Therefore, in this sentence, watching is a non-finite verb and are is a finite verb. Now we will look at gerunds and infinitives. A gerund is a noun formed by adding ing to a verb. For example, playing, doing, watching, etc. Now this is very interesting. It looks like a verb. It is like when you add ing to a verb, you get a certain words, playing, doing, watching, like that. But when such words are used not as a verb but as a noun, then they are called gerunds. And gerund has to be distinguished from the present continuous form of the verb, which is also formed by adding ing to the verb. ഇത് രണ്ടും തമ്മിൽ കൺഫ്യൂസ്ഡ് ആവരുത്. ഒരു വേർബിന് കൂടെ ing ചേർക്കുമ്പോൾ എപ്പോഴും അത് ജെറണ്ട് അല്ല. വേർബ് പ്ലസ് ing നമ്മൾ വേർബായിട്ട് തന്നെ ഉപയോഗിച്ചാൽ അത് കണ്ടിന്യൂസ് ഫോം ആയിരിക്കും. പക്ഷേ വേർബ് പ്ലസ് ing നൗൺ ആയിട്ട് ഉപയോഗിച്ചാൽ അത് ജെറണ്ട് ആയിരിക്കും. ലുക്ക് അറ്റ് ദി എക്സാമ്പിൾസ്. ഫസ്റ്റ് വൺ, ഐ ആം സ്കിപ്പിംഗ്. Here skipping is a verb. It is the present continuous form of the verb skip. I am skipping. But in the second sentence, I enjoy skipping. Skipping is a gerund. It is a noun. It functions as the object of the verb enjoy. I enjoy skipping. So enjoy is a verb. It is a main verb of that sentence. What do I enjoy? I enjoy skipping. Whereas you cannot ask, when you say I am skipping, you can't say what am I? I am skipping. No, that is not correct. I am skipping. In that sentence, am is a helping verb and skipping is the present continuous form of the verb. Am skipping together forms a verb phrase. But when you say I enjoy skipping, enjoy is the verb and skipping is a gerund. It is the object of the verb. And gerunds can function as subject, as direct object, as indirect object, as subject complement, or as object complement. It can function in more or less the same way that a noun can function. The gerund is sometimes confused with the infinitive, which is formed by adding to before the root form of the verb. So, Gerund is sometimes gerund is basically when you add ing at the end of a verb and use it as a noun. But infinitive is when you add to, the word to, before the root form or the base form of the verb. This is the difference between gerunds and infinitives. So, an example of several phrases that are actually infinitives can be found in this famous line from the poem Ulysses by Lord Alfred Tennyson. To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. To strive, 2 plus base form strive. To seek, 2 plus seek. To find, to yield. All these are examples of infinitives. And let us look at certain example sentences to see how the infinitive can be distinguished from the gerund. I want to read. I enjoy reading. So when you say I want to read is an infinitive. I enjoy reading. Here, reading is a gerund. Both are in the object position. What do I want? I want to read. What do I enjoy? I enjoy reading. In the second set of sentences, we see both infinitives and gerunds in subject position. To travel is my lifelong ambition. Infinitive, to plus travel. Traveling is my passion. Traveling is a gerund, travel plus ing, and both are used in the subject position. So, these are some examples of gerunds and infinitives, which are themselves examples of non-finite verbs. So, most of the verbs that we use are finite verbs, but there are some verbs which function in a slightly different way, which do not necessarily show tense and number, but rather require another verb to show the tense and number. Such verbs are called non-finite verbs, and a participle is a good example of such verbs. But apart from participles, we also have gerunds and infinitives which look like verbs. Gerunds have verb plus ing, and infinitives have to plus base form of the verb. So they look like verb, but both of them do not function exactly like a verb. They function more like a noun. They can be found in the object position or the subject position. Thank you.